All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Discovering Multifamily podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Scandariato with Red Knight Properties. And boy, do we have a show for you guys today. We have a special guest here with us who's, if you're not a part of our Discovering Multifamily Meetup, you can go straight to the Red Knight Properties website, or you can go to Meetup and just type in Discovering Multifamily. But Yakov's actually, we're recording this on February 15th, so we'll be producing this tomorrow, just in time to promote a webinar that Yakov, our guest, will be presenting. And we have a ton of people who already RSVP'd, so we're really looking forward to it. And that will be next, what is it? Is it Tuesday or what? I think it's Wednesday, right, Yakov?
I think it's on the webinar is on a Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah, the webinar is on a Wednesday, 5 o'clock Eastern time. If you follow me or, even Yakov on social media, you can get a link to it. Like I said, if you're already a part of the Discovering Multifamily Meetup, definitely find a link for that as well. We'll also be simultaneously, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but we're going to try it on Clubhouse. I'll be just putting the speakerphone up to the computer, and I've already set expectations. So we'll be also on Clubhouse as well. If you don't follow me already, it's just my Scandariato. So feel free to listen to the presentation in that format as well. So with that being said, our special guest here is Yakov Smart. And Yakov, at least in the multifamily real estate industry, is considered to be one of the leading experts when it comes to attracting high net worth investors and raising your capital, because you need to raise capital for your deals if you're working on larger properties, most likely. He's also the author of Disrupting LinkedIn, and like I mentioned, he's a sought out after authority. He's been on multiple TV shows with Samantha Dianchi in Bravo on $1 Million Listing, and he's coming to us from Arizona. So we'd love to hear about your platform, Linked Lead Enterprises, and let's talk about raising capital for multifamily.
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you for having me. I know it's a hot topic right now. I know, when people reach out to us, usually, even if they've been in multifamily for a while, what happened with the whole COVID thing is before to meet investors, you'd shake hands and literally go to 8 to 10 conferences a year, and you'd make those key contacts and build those relationships. Well, that obviously changed in 2020. So, when we think of LinkedIn, we think of a way to take that investor relationship building and really scale it, but also in a way that feels, and this is important, that feels authentic, in a way that feels genuine, and in a way that's not forced. So definitely a lot of potential, definitely a lot of opportunity there for people who want to raise private capital.
Excellent. So exactly. So usually it was in person, and it's still in person too in 2020, and I'd say more on the one-to-one format as opposed to large, conferences. So still meeting people in that format, at least for now. So how are people, obviously we're going to talk about this a lot in our webinar, but if you can kind of give us maybe just a high level framework of, what we're going to speak about.
Yeah, and we'll talk about some of this during the meetup too. But basically, what you have to understand that a lot of high net worth individuals, there's a new openness to looking at investment opportunities, especially alternative investment opportunities online. I mean, a lot of people who are going to be watching this and listening to this, I've heard of Yield Street. Well, in Q4 of 2020, they raised almost $2 billion in private capital. That's one quarter in 2020. So the opportunity is certainly there. What people need to understand is that LinkedIn has those type of high net worth individuals, and when you have the right strategy, you can reach them directly. So whether it's doctors, lawyers, CEOs, venture capitalists, I mean, you name it, it's entrepreneurs, all these different types of high net worth individuals who you want to build relationships with. LinkedIn is a channel for reaching those people directly and starting to build that relationship and starting to educate those people. So it really starts with understanding, the platform specifically, how you can go about building a list of those people, right? Because what some people may be familiar with are list brokers, where you can pay 2,000, 3,000, however much, and get a list of accredited investors that's ice cold. I mean, it's cooler than an ice pack. And you've got to sift through that. And some of that data by the time you get it is going to be outdated. Plus, probably 20 other people have bought that list or trying to do something with it. So what LinkedIn allows you the opportunity to do is to build a more hyper targeted, more accurate list, literally when you know what you're doing within a matter of minutes, and then go out there and add those people to your network. And from there, using content, using direct messaging, using your profile, building the trust that you're going to need to get them to raise their hand and say, hey, you know what? I want to find out more about what you do. I want to find out more about investing with you, which is what the platform can be for raising capital.
Sure. No, it makes a lot of sense. And I would say that for us in my company, Red Knight Properties, we do put syndicated deals together. And LinkedIn, I've invested with people who I've met on LinkedIn. What ends up usually happening is we usually get to know each other. We'll have an intro call.
Yeah.
Sometimes, for the most part, they might be local to me, so I usually meet them for coffee or whatever. If the opportunity arises, and then we end up investing with each other. So, kind of talk to us about, for, like you mentioned, the kind of COVID. Let's just say we're not going out shaking hands or doing anything. I know obviously there's differences between 506B and 506C, where 506B is you gotta establish a relationship and develop it over time in order for them to invest with you. Is your strategy that you're going to talk to us about more on the 506C side, which is essentially when the operators have the opportunity to market their deal? They have this 300 unit building in Tallahassee and they're raising, $5 million, and they're only targeting accredited investors, and they don't necessarily have to have a pre-existing relationship. So is that something that you help other operators, with, by using LinkedIn for the 506C, or is it a combination of both?
It's a combination of both, and that's a great question. So the way to do it for a 506B, and even if you're doing a 506C, let's say you're raising $5 million for an apartment building in Florida, I still highly recommend taking that relationship beyond LinkedIn. I wouldn't just, send someone a message like, hey, there's an investment opportunity. You don't know me, I don't know you, but want to wire me 200 or 300 grand. Like, that's usually not how it works, right? So regardless of what type of raise you're doing, it's important to get someone's interest on LinkedIn, and it's important to have that intro meeting, like you mentioned. That can be over Zoom, that can be over phone, it can be done one-to-many via webinar, and start that process and start establishing that relationship, because that's also going to lead to them telling more people. It's going to lead to you getting more referrals too. So there's the similarities in the process. And certainly, listen, if you're doing a presentation to raise $5 million and you just want to get people on that presentation, yeah, you can use LinkedIn for that and be more direct about it. But I still recommend taking the long game, building the relationship, because not only is that going to allow you to raise capital for your upcoming deal, but for years to come, you want to have that list of deal ready investors. That's really where you gain leverage here.
Exactly. So talk to us a little bit about that. So what's the most effective way an operator or someone looking to raise capital for whatever project it is, it doesn't even have to be real estate, but we're talking about multifamily specifically on here. How do they know that this dentist or doctor that works at, let's just say, I don't know, New York Presbyterian, how do we know that they're even interested in real estate? How do you target so specifically on LinkedIn for these high net worth individuals?
So you can target by interest, you can target by groups. Most people, here's what I've found and what our students have found. Most people have heard somewhere that they should be investing in real estate. That's especially among high net worth individuals, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who hasn't heard that. A lot of people aren't quite aware of how passive real estate investing works, let alone what asset class to put their money into, let alone how to select the right operator. So I'm a big proponent of educational based marketing. So when you start building the relationship, asking them questions, gauging their awareness, offering something of value first, and then let people self-select and say, hey, I want to know more about that. Or I'm glad you asked. I'm actually not familiar, but can you tell me more about this, right? or how much money do I need to be considered, or what makes me an accredited investor. Like, there's people that don't know that, right? And I think one of the mistakes a lot of syndicators and people raising capital make online and on LinkedIn is you'll see their profile and you'll see their messaging, and it's all about, the jargon and the lingo that's specific to, like, the terms, as an investor. They may not be aware yet. They may not even know quite how passive real estate investing works. They may not know that there's different opportunities within a syndication, right? Or what a syndication is. So, or what the difference between that and a real estate fund is. So it's a lot of initial education, but it's putting a hook out there that's going to get the right person who's at least mildly interested to say, I want to at least find out more about this, right? Because the first investment, before they invest money, they have to invest their attention. And a lot of people want to go straight to the money before getting the attention. And that's not how it works.
Right. So how do you build a brand as a, large question? What's the best way a company could, or individual that runs the capital raising facility of the company, build their brand, whether they're, an emerging operator, starting from an emerging operator to more of, like you mentioned, an operator who has experience and maybe has gotten some success on LinkedIn. Almost like, how do you take it to the next level without getting too detailed about it?
Yeah. So it needs to be investor centric. What I mean by that, you want to meet them where they're at. Like I said, people usually aren't just like saying, well, I've got 500K. I need to just put it somewhere and take the money off my hands. That's usually not, the way high net worth individuals think. And people didn't get to be wealthy by being careless with their money. So it's all about, how do you get people to trust you, right? So rather than, I see a lot of, and this is something that, comes up a lot with syndicators and operators, is they try to build a really fancy brand. They invest in a fancy logo and website, and it's all about them and it's very well written, but what's in it for the investor, right? Because oftentimes, you can take that same information, the basic generic stuff, put it on another syndicator operator's website. It's going to be the same kind of stuff, right? So you want to have unique perspective, and you want to be the one to address some of those questions lingering in their minds, right? Like, what is the risk? What is the downside? How do you mitigate risk? How does this investment do in a certain kind of economic climate? How does this compare to the stock market? There's so many different angles and things that'll get people interested. And it's about making it more about them than about, you. And you could just be starting out and doing your first deal, and you've already established yourself as an authority because you understand where they're at in their investing journey. So that's a really, really big thing.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. It's something that we try to pride ourselves with too. It's always, we always have like an educational approach, like, just like you mentioned, you have yours too. So how, I guess, is LinkedIn, when you're comparing it to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even Clubhouse now, rank in terms of, because people do raise capital on Facebook and they do raise capital on Instagram. I know Brandon Turner, he said he raises a ton of capital on Instagram. I guess, why is LinkedIn the number one in your mind in order to attract these individuals that want to invest alongside you?
Well, Brandon Turner, he's the bigger pockets guy, right?
Yeah, he's got that too.
So Brandon's a pretty big name, right? And I mean, sometimes especially like what beginners do in this space is they say, oh, this Brandon Turner, Joe Fairless, what are they doing? Well, these guys have been at the online marketing space for a number of years. They've spent tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in marketing, building that brand, repetition. They put so much bandwidth into it. They've got their podcast. You don't need to necessarily build that kind of platform to hit your capital raising goals, right? And if you do want to build it, that's fine. It's going to take some time. There's not really a definitive shortcut there. However, with LinkedIn, you can have a profile up literally within a day that positions you as an authority, okay? You don't need to constantly be posting a bunch of content if you're building your network strategically and if you're looking at the right people who you're targeting there. So LinkedIn is superior in how hyper specific you can be with the targeting, and where you can do one to many, but it can feel like one to one, which is really, really powerful. And it's not a place like Instagram or Facebook. You've pretty much got to be posting lots of content, or you've got to have a big ad budget. You don't need neither on LinkedIn, right? You can accomplish that goal of building those investor relationships without doing either, because it takes zero ad spend to get this thing up and running, right? So it's a different platform, and it's just more specific. A lot of people who are high net worth individuals, they're not on Facebook or Instagram for any type of business reasons. They're on LinkedIn to build relationships, to learn, to grow, and to do business. I mean, that's why they're there. So it's a different tone, different type of intention. And it really is, when you do it the right way, you can establish that expertise there. It's a great platform for doing that.
Excellent. And so, like you mentioned, Facebook has their ad platform. So does Instagram.
Yeah.
I've never seen a LinkedIn. Does LinkedIn have a new one with their ad platform now?
They do, but in
Okay.
most cases, it's not the best ad platform to use, especially for finding investors. I'm big on taking an organic approach, and by that, it's building a hyper-targeted list and then adding them to your network and starting those conversations. It's like going to a conference where every single person you meet, is a high net worth individual, right? And you can even kind of rig the game in your favor. Hey, you went to this business school. Guess what? Every single person on LinkedIn is a high net worth individual, and you have that instant commonality. Or, hey, you live in this area or in this zip code, so do they, right? So it's being very intentional around the messaging, and it's a hyper focused approach. That's what works really, really well. But no, I wouldn't recommend the LinkedIn ads platform. It's just not, for advertising. It's just not the best way to go. Plus, for most people, who are probably listening to this, you don't have 10 or 20 grand a month to spend on online advertising when it's not proven to work. So the organic approach, zero ad spend, and you can automate it to where it's a 15 to 20 minute a day process that you can easily delegate, which is cool too.
Excellent. So talk about that automation a little bit. Is that through just different social media managers, platforms?
No. There's some third-party tools. Some are better than other. I'm not going to list specific ones here because there's best practices that go with it, and it's really easy to mess it up. But I will say these tools, the best ones, they basically act as if a human was doing it for you. So let's say you want to go out and make 100 new contacts in a day. Well, guess what? You can have this tool that does it for you, and it works seamlessly day in and day out. So it's not the same as automating your posting. Like there's tools like Hootsuite, for example, you can use for scheduling your posting, and those have pros and cons. But this is more automating messaging flows. It's almost like, for people who are listening to this, if they've done email marketing or they've received email marketing, that was automated. It was done at scale. And yet, that was done through email. The great thing about LinkedIn messages, much higher open rate, much easier deliverability. So it really is a great opportunity, especially right now.
Excellent. So it doesn't matter what stage of the game you're at in your business, whether you're, like you said, you can whip together a nice profile in, an hour, but someone who may be in the business for years and years and years, maybe they just have a basic one. You don't even really know what they do. So it's very interesting to hear that. And so can you tell our listeners, before we run, how can people find you? Obviously, we have our webinar, guys. Again, for those of you who didn't hear it, next week on Tuesday, which is the 23rd at 5 o'clock. So we're looking forward to that. Tell us a little bit about your company, and I think you offer some educational, and I think you do a coaching as well. Can you talk to our audience about that?
Yeah, for sure. So easiest way to connect, you could find me on LinkedIn. My name's really easy to find. Send me a connection request, say that you heard about me through Anthony. Glad to connect with all of you, and you can see some of the people in my network too. And then, we're doing the virtual meetup next week. That's going to be a great time. I recommend people come live because they'll be able to actually ask questions and interact. It's one of my favorite things to do, is just interacting with a live audience. Plus, I know we're doing the Clubhouse, which, I personally haven't done a Clubhouse yet. So it's really interesting to me too, how that will go, and people will be able to hear us. And then beyond that, if you check out the website linkleads.us, you can certainly learn more about some of the programs we offer and some of the education. And, really what I'm about is empowering entrepreneurs, empowering especially real estate entrepreneurs, and giving them a new way, a unique way, and really a proven way at this point of building investor relationships beyond their current network so they can raise more capital, which is usually the key to scaling and doing larger deals.
Excellent. Well, we're looking forward to having you on the webinar and really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. And for those of you who liked what you heard and or saw, if you could give us a rating and review on iTunes, we'd really appreciate it. It helps myself and Yakov's message get out to a larger audience. So that's just the way iTunes works. So we would appreciate that. And then we'll have a link to Yakov's LinkedIn and the description on iTunes as well. So you'll be able to connect with him directly. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you at the meetup next week and talk to you then.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Excellent.